Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Launchpad Associate Support Workshops. Very excited that you're joining us this afternoon. We have Kyle Mendoza, SCPGA Section Champion, and taking us through it. I want to remind everybody that feel free to interject your questions or chats. I'll be paying attention to the chat box if you have a question for Kyle as we go through his presentation. Thank you, Mr. Mendoza, for being with us this afternoon. Welcome to the Launchpad.
Thank you, buddy. It's a pleasure.
Side of the table, and it is all yours.
All right, thank you. So this is the level 1 learning, teaching, and game part of the work experience portfolio. Let's get going. A little about myself. Right now, I'm currently the director of performance at the Farms Golf Club. I've been a PGA member since 2018. Was in the PGM 2.0 program. Got my first job at working as an assistant in 2007 at Candlewood Country Club, working under the man you just heard, John Kulo, for a few years. A lot of good times there. After that, moved on to South Hills Country Club in 2012. Worked under Michael Jack, who is one of the best in the business, and was able to learn a lot from him. And was lucky enough to be head professional there for about a year and a half until I moved to the Farms. I am married to Chelsea. We have 4 beautiful children. We have 2 boys and 2 girls, ages ranging from 9 to 1. So it's a little chaotic here in the Mendoza household, but it's all good. I love the game of golf. I love the business of golf. It's a great time. It's full of lots of challenges, but there's always a way to work through it and have a good time with it. So I love it. Okay, the first part of this, the learning outcomes. I know that sounds a little weird, but okay. So when you're teaching, or I'm sorry, when they're learning, you need to know how the students learn and process golf knowledge and skills, and identify implications for teaching. Some of that, it just requires a few questions you need to ask them. So sometimes you need to ask them if they're a visual learner or if they're more of an informational learner. Sometimes you need to make sure that they're not just hitting golf balls at a rapid rate. Sometimes you need to, maybe give them 2 or 3 at a time, and then pause and go over some of the either pre-swing or in-swing adjustments that you're working on, so they can actually start to learn that. So not just hitting golf balls at a rapid rate. Sometimes it's as simple as that. Know how to define and distinguish learning and performance. When you are giving lessons, you need to really understand how someone is learning and how they're able to take what they're learning and be able to perform what you're trying to have them perform, whether it's something that's golf swing or whether it's something game related. You have to make sure that they are able to do that. Understand how juniors learn golf knowledge and skills, identify implications for teaching. Teaching junior golfers can be a little odd sometimes because you have such a wide range. You have 5-year-olds all the way to basically 16 or 17-year-olds. So sometimes it's a matter of the younger kids making it fun for them, making games out of what we can kind of transfer into golf skills. And then sometimes with the older kids in high school, you need to really get them to grow and develop and mature their game. So sometimes it's a matter of going on the golf course and teaching them how to play golf. Some of those kids that are really talented that can hit the golf ball, they don't know how to play golf. And so that can set them back several years. I know I was definitely one of those junior golfers that I just didn't really know how to play golf until I was in my mid-20s, which is, kind of a shame in some aspect. But that's why now as golf professionals, we're here. We have to teach these kids how to play the game. Conduct a physical evaluation of a junior golfer and create developmentally appropriate exercise and training programs. this isn't just for junior golfers, this is for all golfers. The physical evaluation of someone is extremely important. It should be the first thing that you ask people when they're taking lessons from you. If they have a physical ailment that prevents them from performing a certain activity or a certain range of motion, you need to know immediately. You need to know right before you do anything, because they may have a golf swing that is a compensation for the fact that they can't move a certain way. And so if you're trying to get somebody in a certain position, whether it's with the body or with the golf club, that if they can't do it, you're going to struggle. So you have to figure out a way to work around the physical ailments that they have. So that's why it's a very important thing to ask right out of the gate. The teaching learning outcomes. Establish student-teacher relationships that promote greater student learning and enjoyment. I learned in my level, I think it was my level 3 seminars in Florida. We had a great teacher. His name was Warren Botke. He actually is a well-renowned instructor in Florida that actually taught Brooks Koepka for most of his junior career and into college. And he actually gave me something that I still practice today, each and every day, in that when you start to have a relationship with a student, you need to really write things down and get to know them on a personal level. So sometimes it's a matter of asking them, if they have any children or what their family life is like, or sometimes they'll tell you, hey, you know what, I need to skip next week's lesson because I'm going to be in Hawaii or on a trip. Write down some of those things and take note, and make sure you check back on them when they get back. It's always nice to ask them, hey, how was your trip? Or, I heard you went to play Bandon Dunes last week. How did that go? How'd you hit the golf ball? How'd you like the experience? Get involved a little bit in there and establish those relationships. It makes it really, really, really easy for those people to continue to take lessons from you. I know this isn't talked enough about in the teaching section, but your teaching students is basically your own small business. Okay, so having these relationships, and anyone who has a small business knows how important relationships are to help grow their business and to make it successful. You have to do these things with your students and get those relationships started and get them to continue to mature, because those people will continue to take lessons from you, and especially if it comes down to maybe they've heard something great about another instructor at the club that you work at, or even somewhere else, that they're going to have you're going to be more inclined to stay with you versus moving on. Develop a communication style that fits the student and increases instructional effectiveness. Basically, I take that as you got to get right to the point with some of these things. If you have a communication style with your student that you just kind of ramble on and on and on, and they're going to stop listening to you after about 10 seconds of you rambling on about whatever it is you're rambling on about. You have to make sure that you're keeping focus to the student, and make sure that you're having conversation back and forth and get their feedback so they can be involved in their own growth and development as a player. So make sure that you have a communication style that is to the point and very clear. Analyze students' instructional needs and set clear, purposeful learning and practice goals. In your work experience workbook, I believe, I'm looking at it right now, give me a second. Activity 2, the observation, there's a lesson worksheet on there that pretty much kind of lays out exactly what that's saying is. You need to analyze the student's instructional needs. You're going to have to do an observation assessment of their current state, and it starts all pre-swing. There's pre-swing and in-swing observations you have to do. Make sure that you do that, and make note of anything that sticks out, whether it's good or bad, and make sure that you set clear clear goals on how to improve that, and discuss that with them. It's okay to have, you know, a 5 or 10 minute discussion on what you see and what you're observing, and make sure that you guys get a goal for the day, or it might even be a goal for a month, you know, whatever it is. Make sure you set a time frame for it, and make sure that you have a clear, purposeful goal of what you want to do. Know the format for an effective golf lesson. That is also on here, in your work experience workbook. You need to, I don't believe there's one on here. You might, I mean, there's kind of, some of it kind of goes through it a little bit. You need to really understand how to have an effective golf lesson, whether it's 30 minutes or 60 minutes, whatever the time frame is, and make sure that you stick to the plan, and make sure that you get that person in and out of there in the time frame that they have reserved for you, and they leave knowing exactly what to take out of that lesson. You know, sometimes it could be just you know, having clear goals set, and then kind of getting the player feedback on how it worked out in that lesson. But always know, and sometimes it's coming up with your own format of an effective golf lesson. And sometimes it's by trial and error. Sometimes you'll try something and it doesn't work. Sometimes you try something and it works, and make sure that you put that in there. Deliver effective explanations and demonstrations during a golf lesson. When you are teaching, make sure that you are using the correct key phrases. I know one thing that I'm guilty of is sometimes if I'm talking to somebody, I'll ask them what direction they think, you know, or if we're talking about ball flight, we'll say left or right, and at the end of that, I'll say right, like do you agree with that? That's kind of a weird thing to do. If you go up, that went left, right, that's kind of sounds weird, right? So that's something that I always kind of keep track of myself, because everyone's got their own little kind of weird things that they say. But when you're explaining something, make sure you're using, you know, if you're talking about club path or club face angle, or you're talking about contact, you're talking about, you know, grip, whatever it is, make sure that you give an effective explanation of what you're trying to tell them, and make sure you demonstrate it correctly for them as well. Engage in self-assessment of teaching skills and teaching skills. So kind of what I just did, do a self-assessment of kind of what you're doing. Sometimes you have to kind of look back and ask yourself, did I do this correctly, or did I not do it correctly? What worked, what didn't work? Especially when you're analyzing video, or you're making goals up for people, make sure that you are doing that and keeping yourself up to date with research as well about the golf swing. Sometimes you know, you have to be competent with kind of what, you know, where the game is evolving. And so I know myself, I'm always researching things on the golf swing, because sometimes, you know, something new comes up that we don't know about, or maybe somebody has a different way of explaining something than you have, and it actually makes sense to you, so you can actually implement that in your teachings. The game learning outcomes. Recognize the appropriate club head path and club face position information to improve a golfer's performance. Some of that just gets down to the principles and laws of ball flight, which in level 1 you should be becoming very competent with. Let's see. Conduct appropriate assessments to determine the short game skill level of the golfer. Sometimes with this, it's about setting up little drill stations in the short game area if you have one. If not, maybe you can use a driving range and just kind of set up little 10, 20, 30-yard shots. Do an assessment of how they're hitting the golf ball, and also check your equipment. Anytime you're doing an assessment, you kind of want to check equipment, because, you know, sometimes somebody with as far as short game goes, they may have the wrong type of wedge, whether they don't have a scoring wedge, like a Bokeh wedge, or MD5 Jaws wedge, or a tailor-made middle grind wedge. If they don't have a scoring wedge like that and they're trying to hit a high flop shot with the sand wedge that comes with their iron set, probably not a good idea for them to do that. They're going to need a different type of wedge. So make sure that when you're doing these assessments, you're not only looking at the mechanics of the golfer, but also their equipment. Gain understanding of the short game elements to help lower scores and improve the player. Some of that you're gonna have to go on the golf course and do. You can do it on the range as well, but you have to start to see where these players' efficiencies are in their game. You know, sometimes it's you know, getting them to think more of, you know, instead of trying to hit the green from 50 yards, maybe let's try to get inside a 10-foot circle and get them to practice hitting the golf ball within a certain distance from a hole location or a certain spot on the range. Sometimes people just don't think correctly. Sometimes they just they're good enough with trying to hit the ball on the green, and they wonder why, you know, when they have 50, 60 yards and they make a bogey. Well, it's because they're not thinking properly. So sometimes you have to get the player to just kind of adjust their mindset on some of those short shots. And then also too, obviously there's mechanical issues as well, but make sure you make that all come full circle there when you're teaching your student. Define club performance terms and specifications, including lie angle and club face angular position, and describe their effect on ball flight and player performance. This is something that I have become decently good at, I feel like, in the last year or so, because working at where I work now, we actually have a performance center that I teach and fit out of. It's very important to understand lie angle and club face angle and positioning when swinging a golf club. And so, you know, if they have a club that's too flat or too upright, that's going to have consequences. If they have you know, maybe the loft is incorrect on some of their golf clubs, and that's why they're hitting the ball shorter than, you know, sometimes they have a distance gap from an 8-iron to a 9-iron, especially people with forged clubs. Those loft and lies will bend as they play them. So make sure that you have a good idea on their specifications, and then describe to them the effect on the ball flight. So that way, when you make changes to them or offer to make changes to them, they understand why you're doing that. And define what information is required to properly assess a player's golf equipment. Some of this is actually more equipment based than anything. You have to kind of understand how to check lie angle, how to check loft, how to check club weight, how to check to see if a player is in the proper shaft for whatever club they're hitting. So sometimes it's a matter of having that equipment to where you can analyze all that. So if you don't have something like that, you're gonna have to figure out ways of getting that, whether it's at another golf club, or you can always contact me. We can get you equipment to do that. Sorry, my whole family just got home right now. Give me 1 sec. Observe a player's swing and motion, ball flight, and equipment to evaluate the effectiveness of their equipment. So once you get these kind of when you assess their equipment from a loft lie angle or a shaft perspective, you always need to make sure that's translating into their actual ball flight when they hit a golf ball. So you need to get them swinging it, hitting that club, and make sure that the ball flight and equipment is effective for what they need it to do. Learning, teaching, and game work experience activities. Assess your own equipment. So on your guys' workbook, you have a pretty detailed worksheet here. Hold on, I'm kind of pulling it up right now. Okay, so when you look at that, you have manufacturer, grip size, length, shaft flex, shaft weight, swing weight, total weight, lie angle, loft angle, face angle, and then your dynamic stuff is face angle, ball speed, launch angle, spin rate, carry distance, all that good stuff. When you do these assessments, again, you're going to have certain equipment, and so when you do that, if you have trouble, you can always reach out to myself, which my email is on the end of this presentation. I can work with you on it. You guys can, if you need to come down to our center and get these assessment numbers, we can definitely do that. But you're going to have some equipment to do some of these things. Observe full swing lessons. So again, in your work experience workbook, you have a nice lesson worksheet that's got all kinds of nice little boxes to fill in, which I know can be a little redundant at times. So you're going to have to put in like the player's name, the address, what kind of, what they do for a living, the golfer type, the physical condition, are they right or left-handed, their handicap average score, kind of all these little questions. And then it kind of gets into the pre-swing observations, assessment, adjustments. So you have to fill that out when you're observing these full swing lessons. Hopefully you have somebody at your club or at where you work that teaches, so you can makes it a little easier for you to do these observations. If you do not, again, please reach out to me. I give at least 20 lessons a week. So if you need to come down and observe one, please, by all means, let me know. Take a full swing lesson. Same thing. The same worksheet you do for when you're observing one, you're gonna have to do for yourself. And again, the same offer goes out. If you need to take a lesson, you need someone to do it for you, please let me know. Hopefully someone at your club can do that for you. And then the last one, you need to give a full swing lesson. So you're going to take all this stuff you learned from observing and taking a lesson and assessing your own equipment and have all these worksheets you're filling out, and then give a lesson and give a well-structured, well-thought-out lesson to one of your students. Okay, so that activity one, assess your own equipment. Use your own set of golf clubs, measure the static club performance specification numbers, and determine each club's playability dynamically. Find possible performance gaps between clubs. If possible, measure carry distance to help you in the gap analysis. Make appropriate club adjustments, both static and dynamic, to improve performance. Again, we kind of just touched on that a couple of slides ago, but same thing. You're gonna have to have some equipment to help you do this, and if you need something, let me know. And like I said, the one thing that I actually just did this with the San Diego State golf team was we did distance measuring, so make sure that their clubs are gapped correctly. It's important to understand why certain clubs have gaps. So like, for instance, you have players that go from, again, those scoring wedges to then like an iron pitching wedge that comes with the set. You're going to have more than a 8 to 10 yard gap with that, because it's a totally different golf club. It's not just a one piece of forged metal with grooves on it. Now you have some clubs that might have a little bit of tungsten weighting in there, and they're designed a little different. So that club is going to hit the ball with a little bit more speed than it would if that loft was on a scoring wedge. So sometimes from the gap wedge to pitching wedge, that gapping isn't 8 to 10 yards. It gets up to 15 to 18. So make sure that those people understand that. And then moving up the bag, I think the hardest thing for some people to do is to gap from the 5 and 4 iron into a hybrid or a 5-wood, 7-wood, and 3-wood, and understand that gapping, what it entails to gap those correctly as well. So one thing that's not on here, this seems to be all about golf clubs. Golf ball is huge right now. The golf ball, playing the correct golf ball is extremely important. I know we just switched 3 or 4 of those players on that San Diego State team to a different golf ball. They just weren't playing the right golf ball. So when you're playing the right golf ball, those gaps are better. The ball flight results are better, especially with approach shots and or driver. So make sure that you can make sure you pay attention to that as well. Observe 2 full swing lessons. You are required to observe 2 different PGA professionals as they conduct a full swing lesson, 50 to 60 minutes. Place camera on a tripod or stabilizer in an appropriate manner. I have a couple pictures of kind of what that appropriate camera angle should be. The camera should be level. You don't want it tilted, obviously. And the sun should be behind the camera. You don't want to have the sun in front where the player just looks like it's a silhouette, them swinging a golf club. You need to actually be able to see in detail that person, which That means that sun needs to be behind the camera, or maybe even somewhat to the side. You definitely don't want to face that camera into the sun. For individual swings, the camera's field of vision should include the student's feet, golf ball, and the top of the student's backswing. Use the highest shutter speed possible. The reason being is it's easier to see the club shaft and the club face when you have that shutter speed. Some helpful tips for that. Activities 2, 3, and 4 require completion of worksheets that we talked about a little earlier. It's recommended that the worksheets be printed prior to lesson at hand to review the information required and record notes. So just print those little the worksheets out from work experience workbook, put them on a clipboard, and make sure that you can fill those in. It's obviously going to be impossible to understand or to remember, all 50 or 60 things they ask you there. So print that thing out and then make little notes in there when you're observing those lessons. Use the information and notes recorded on the printed worksheets to help enter your final answers into the portfolio. That's obviously a little easier. If you have an iPad or have something where you can actually take it with you, you can probably enter it in as you go. That makes it a little easier as well. Take a lesson. You're required to take a full swing lesson from a PGA professional for 50 to 60 minutes. Please adhere to the same technological requirements as activity 2. Local PGA professionals are typically extremely helpful in assisting with these activities. Try to reach out to professionals that teach quite a bit, i.e. a director of instruction or director of performance, or instructors that work for a golf academy at a local club. Again, I haven't ran into someone that was not helpful with this throughout my level 1, 2, and 3 PGA work. I'm sure they're out there, but hopefully everyone is extremely helpful towards you. Like I said, you can always contact myself. We also have a couple instructors at the farms that I'm sure will be more than happy to help you. So if you have trouble finding someone, please let me know. Give a full swing lesson. Required to conduct a full swing lesson with a beginning golfer. Don't take the +4 handicap that you have at your club and give them an easy lesson. You need to take a beginning golfer, someone who has been playing golf for more than a year, and give them a full swing lesson. Complete the worksheet provided and document specific information concerning the lesson. Please adhere to the same technological requirements as activity 2 and 3. This activity gives you the chance to practice what you observed in the lessons from activity 2 and 3. Like I mentioned earlier, you're going to take those things that you've learned from the PGA professionals that you observed and you took a lesson from, and really start to put that into practice, everything that you learned. Carefully consider your lesson opening and your lesson closing. It's always good, especially if you're doing lessons outdoors. I'm lucky because I do about 99% of my lessons indoors, which is super cool. But when I teach outside, typically, especially because I live in California, it's sunny all the time. You're gonna want to make sure you take your sunglasses off when you're introducing yourself every single time. I don't care if you've been teaching a student for 2 or 3 years. It's always nice to look them in the eye in the introduction part of your lesson opening. Take your sunglasses off and make sure that you're looking at them when you greet them. In your lesson closing, make sure you do a nice thought out conclusion. It could be something as wrapping up everything that you were talking about or working on, both from your perspective and from the player's feedback. Make sure if they gave you something great in their feedback when you're talking to them back and forth, make sure you mention that to them and relate that to what they're feeling or what they're trying to do in their golf swing. And then at the conclusion of that, it's always good for retention purposes to make sure you schedule the next lesson. Always be very good with that. Those students keep coming back when you just keep trying to get them to take another lesson the following week. Let's see. Yep, exactly. Okay, so that one's good. Okay, here's a proper camera angle. So we have a putting one on the left. Anytime you're doing a putting lesson, make sure that you have a good angle of where the ball is lined up, where the putter head is lined up, and where their feet are lined up in relation to the target. Now, if you don't have putting plates, which is what that plate is right there, I highly suggest getting one if you're going to teach putting to your students. It is made and used by a teacher named Derek Ueda, who's also in this section. He is wonderful. He's awesome. He's the best putting mind that I've ever seen and talked to. But that putting plate, obviously you have the line of the ball, everything is lined up towards that target. So you get immediate feedback when that camera is rolling of what's happening, not only with the path of the putter and the club face, but what's happening with the ball when it's taking off. That line will move a certain direction if the club face angle is incorrect. So you can, makes it really easy to teach people path and face angle when putting, when you can get a proper camera angle like that. And then on the right, that's a camera angle for teaching if you have face on and down the line. Lucky for me, I can do both in the center at the farms. Sometimes you're going to do one at a time. Just make sure that the camera is placed at the hands. So you want to have, let's see if I can, I'm going to use this sweet tool here. Let's see if it works out. Make sure that the camera itself is pointed right in this area. Okay, that's a terrible color. Sorry about that, but you can still see it. You don't want it over here or over here because it's going to give you a weird angle for the club path and the club face. So make sure that it's literally right there by the hands, or maybe even a fraction inside the hands. But you don't want it towards the club head, and you definitely don't want it towards the body. Okay, and it needs to be about waist high. You don't want it up here where you can see, you know, where it's even level with the head. You don't want it too low because, again, those things start to give you false feedback. And then when you're looking straight on, make sure the camera itself is straight on. It's not at a weird angle. Okay, so you can just go basically walk that camera straight from the player, and depending on your kind of the width of what the zoom that you have in your camera, make sure you can see the entire their entire golf swing with those cameras. Okay, and question or comments, you can always contact me, Kyle at thefarmsgolfclub.com, and my cell phone number is on there as well. Again, I've always feel free to contact me. I will always get back to you. It might not be right away. It might take a couple hours if I'm busy, but I will always get back to you and try to help you out the best I can. I think that's it, John.
Thank you very much, Kyle. Questions that have come in from the class presentation. When doing the recorded lesson, how do you feel about that lesson being someone the student knows? Something the golf professional, level 1 associate, and the student, they know each other. Do you think that affects the video presentation in a negative way, or if this is okay?
Yeah, you can know them for sure. I mean, I did, I think my level 1 videos, I actually did my little brother because he had never played golf before. So he's 10 years younger than I was at the time. I did my video lessons with him. It's anyone at that skill level. If you know them, great. If you don't know them, that's fine too. But yeah, that's totally fine.
And another question that has come in, more on the personal level. Can you talk a little bit about how you managed your time working full time through your entire associateship with getting your stuff done?
That's actually a really good question. I think that's part of why this is somewhat difficult to get through, because there's a lot of information to fill in. There's a lot of, in my opinion, a lot of redundancy to some of these things. They want the information from these worksheets. I think what it came down to for me, and at the time I only had one child, and then it turned into 2, and then it turned into 3. What it comes down to is you have to just end up putting time in where you structure like, okay, Tuesday, Thursday, I'm going to do it from 7 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. It's an hour and a half. Just get 90 minutes of it done, and then do it 2 days later again for 90 minutes. If you want to start at 2 days a week, great. If you end up working away to 3 or 4 days a week, even better. But just don't let it sit there and marinate, because you will not do it. You won't do it. And that's not a reflection on you or anyone else that does that. But when it's just sitting there, it won't get done. You have to continue to open up and do it, even if it's for an hour or 90 minutes at a time. And even if it starts at 1 day a week and then you work away to 2 days a week. When you start to see that progression percentage on your work experience portfolio status increase from 5% to 10%, and then you're at 30%, and then you're at 40%, then you're at 60%. Every time that thing goes up, it makes you want to do it more and more and more. Believe me, I know it sounds like kind of cliche, but it makes you want to keep doing it. So put time aside, and it came from me too. Like, my wife was really good about it. I actually would stay at work after we close. If I close the shop at 5 o'clock, I would just say, hey, you know what? When I get home, it's too hard for me to do this. I'm gonna stay here for 2 hours and knock some of this stuff out. So if you have a relationship with someone, great. They're gonna be understanding of it, and if they're not, then I don't know. I don't have to tell you that.
I can attest to your associateship work in the sense that when we worked together at Candlewood, I want to say you weren't. And can you talk a little bit about the change in you from being an assistant pro at a variety of different clubs, not working on it, and then all of a sudden the change comes where you're like, okay, I'm gonna start prioritizing this. I'm gonna start staying off the clock and getting stuff done. What was it that caused that change? Because that spark, I think a lot of associates are waiting for, and for whatever reason, personally speaking, in their lives, it's not happening. And what was the catalyst for you to say, hey, I'm going to get this done? Because it's not as if you got in the golf business and just knocked it out right away. You worked for a number of years before you really put your foot to the floor.
Yeah, when I worked for you at Candlewood, I was 20 years old when I started, and then 22 and a half, 22, 23 when I left. Yeah, I didn't do it at all. The interesting thing with that is I actually got out of the golf business for about a year, and then came back in, and they actually allowed me to restart my apprenticeship. I had a forfeit whatever work I did the first time, which was 0, so it wasn't a big deal, and then restart it in the 2.0 program. I think the spark, the catalyst for what kind of gets people going is the fact that eventually you're going to get sick of making $15 to $18 an hour. You're going to get sick of it. You're going to have to figure out a way to make money. And the only way you can make money in this business is if you're a PGA member. It's the only way to do it. Even in 2016, 17, I was making okay money, but it's because I was able to play and make almost as much as I was making salary by playing golf, which is kind of a backwards thing that this business should be. Usually those people that are in the business should be making more, but
of course, not a lot of us can rely on the supplemental income coming from our playing ability like you can.
Correct. Well, yeah. I mean, I was super lucky with that, but I mean, even still, like this has been 2 years of this where I have been a PGA member, and the money you make when you get that thing done is a lot more than it is when you don't have it. I know that sounds kind of a very, I guess, greedy way of thinking about it, but it's sometimes that's the spark you need. It's like, hey, look, I can't keep making $15 to $18 an hour. You just can't. And the part of the problem is with golf pros is there's really good golf pros out there that work hard, that are level 1 apprentices, that work their tails off, and they work at a pretty decent club and they get paid nothing, and it gets frustrating after a while. And then you tack on that frustration with the fact that you have this glooming thing that you have to do that's redundant, and you have to fill in a bunch of information. Sometimes it can be a little kind of overwhelming to the point where you just put it aside, and you have to not do that. You have to just, again, put time in and get it done. And I also had someone who pushed me. I mean, my wife was like, hey, let's get this done, and kind of laid out some some things and some benefits from being a PGA member to me that she reminded me every day of what that meant. And so, even having somebody like that person can help you as well. But there's just so many benefits that open up when you finish this stuff off. And I know it doesn't seem like it at the time because it's a lot of work, but when you get it done, it's awesome. I mean, and then you never have to worry about it again.
Another kind of personal question that has come in. How do you feel about your growth as a PGA member in terms of champion, director of instruction, director of enjoyment? Talk a little bit about what's next for you. What's your 3 and 5 year plan?
My 3 to 5 year plan is to continue to grow this business that we have going on at the farms. The performance center there, we've only had it open for 7 months, and it's been killing it. It's great. There's a lot of information and a lot of education that I've had to do on the side to make sure that this thing, A, runs correctly, and B, for me, I don't want to ever not have an answer to questions. So I want to continue to keep growing that, keep educating myself on it. In 3 to 5 years, to be honest with you, I haven't thought that far out. My roots are being a golf an operations administrator. So like being a head golf professional or a director of golf somewhere, that may that may come into play in the next couple of years. I'm not sure. As much as I love teaching and having these relationships with people, I do find myself sometimes missing the director of golf role / professional role that I had for about 2 years. So I'd say, to be honest with you, I really don't know. On a side note, I haven't been healthy for the last 8 years as far as my body. I always been having hip and back problems for 8 years, and so there'd be 3 to 5 times a year where I couldn't walk for a week because of something going on in my back or my SI joint, and that seems to be under control. I think there might be something a bigger picture there where if I can stay healthy for another 6 months, I might try to play again. I don't know. I have some people that financially want to help me out, so that's always good to have. But yeah, there's a lot of avenues that I can go down right now, which is nice. And part of that is from finishing this stuff up and being a PGA member. I could not have won the section championship without being a PGA member, and I could not have played in the Farmers Insurance Open without being a PGA member. So those 2 avenues right there were opened up from just finishing this work off. So and if the playing ability isn't there, when you have your PGA membership, you can apply to any job you want to apply to that's in the golf business, which is super cool. You can be a general manager if you wanted to, or you can be an instructor. You can be a membership director. I know plenty of membership directors that are PGA members. I know plenty of GMs that are PGA members. I know plenty of head pros that are PGA members. So it opens up a bunch of avenues for you either way. So that's the main point of getting this stuff done.
Kyle, on behalf of the Education Committee for the SCPGA, thanks for presenting this afternoon on the Launchpad. Those of you that are on the Launchpad workshop this afternoon, remember next Monday, which is March 1st, we've got Paul Sumagase going to be covering rules of golf. Kyle, thanks for joining us. Take care, everybody. Stay safe, stay sane. Any future questions that you have, we're going to email out a PDF of this presentation here in the next hour or so. It'll be available on which you'll find on the SCPGA.com's landing page under the Launchpad webinar series. You could find a recording of Kyle's presentation to help you go through your own level 1 work experience.
John, a quick question this is Tom.
Oh, Tom Son, go for it. You got it.
I just wanted to ask, I'm sorry I'm not on the video call, but I wanted to see if there's any associates outside of the FPGA section joining the call, and if so, which section? I think it's important to know that that could be asked.
Thank you very much, Tom. All right, everybody, stand by for the email, and thanks for joining us this afternoon. We'll see you next week on the Launchpad.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Kyle.
You're welcome.